in the late 70s, Colin?
What was it like? What do you mean? In what
Like
regard?
just
What do you mean?
just in terms with, like trying to
What like?
find your place in the world, because as you know, in the late 70s in Melbourne, there was this new wave happening. Men at Work weren't really new wave, were they? I mean, they were more contemporary. But how did you fit into that sort of movement, even though you were sort of outside that movement?
Oh, we didn't really fit into that movement at all. We didn't
Yeah,
really fit into any movement. That was one of the things about our band. We didn't really know what to do.
yeah.
So we just kind of made it up as we went along, and we the Cricketers Arms, where we used to play, started out. I first started playing there by myself on my own on a Thursday night, every Thursday night, and then Ron joined me to play with me, and so it was an acoustic show thing. We played there. And people used to come. We built up a bit of an audience, and we played there I think we still played there every Thursday night for maybe like, I don't know, 6 months or a year or something before Men at Work formed. And then, so that was the only place that I had a regular gig at. I mean, I used to play some other places as well, like the Albion Hotel in Carlton, I don't know if it's still there or not, but that was a big kind of, union pub, and kind of a lot of, it was a pretty interesting place. I used to play in the corner, and they used to have the television on and the jukebox at the same time.
So,
And I said to the guy, Con, that ran the place, I said, "Hey, Con, do you not think, you could turn the jukebox off when, in the telly when I'm playing these songs?" Because I know, I said, good. He's good to have everything because good atmosphere, good atmosphere. So, uh, um, so yeah, we started playing at the Cricketers Arms, and because that was the only place that we could get a gig, really, and so we started playing there, and then a lot of people started to come, and then we started getting other places to play, like the Pier Hotel in Frankston, and other place in Richmond, whatever, the Central Club in Richmond, and so it just grew from there. It all grew just because the audience grew. That's really what made it work for us. We weren't part of any particular fraternity, and
do you think
I
that's?
don't
Do you think
I don't
that's?
think
Do
I
you
don't
think?
think a lot of other bands really cared for us very much.
Yeah.
They didn't really, because we were a weird kind of hippie fucking jammy kind of band, and it was all a bit, it wasn't really just, brown rice, but it was kind of longish songs, and a bit waffly, and but we had these, but then because when the band happened, it was a really good environment, a vehicle for me for the songs. And so I started to get inspired to write songs because I had a band to play them. And so you'd have that experience where you could write a song on a Tuesday morning and rehearse it in the afternoon, and you'd play it that night. So I started to kind of hit my stride a little bit in terms of writing songs. And so then we had these pretty strong songs that were developing. And but I couldn't. But I liked all the drama of the Pistols and Clash and all that, and I liked I loved the Police when they first hit. That was a big big band. So I was affected by that, but we were just, I don't know, we were just kind of our own thing in a way, and we did things. We always had ambition, and we always wanted to be successful internationally. We didn't want to sign with any local record company. It was only one record company interested in us, and that was CBS Records, which was fortunate because they were an international company, and we managed to get released in different parts of the world.
Yeah, because Mushroom passed on you a couple of times, didn't they?
No, that's untrue.
That's untrue. Okay.
Yeah, we never would have signed with Mushroom.
Okay.
We were never interested in Michael's label. God rest his soul. I mean, that's the story that goes around.
Yeah.
But I think that he may have come to see the band, or in his mind he might have passed on us. But I can remember, and we had a manager, Russell, who was a son of a sheep farmer. And so he didn't really know what he was doing either. But he had good instincts, and he was our guy. And we were in it together. And we told him that we didn't want to sign with Mushroom because Mushroom had never had any success internationally. So there is that story that Michael tells about the fact that one of his regrets was never signing Men at Work, but we would never have signed him in the first place.
Okay. That's interesting because the Mushroom label at that stage, they had like Paul Kelly, Joe, the Sports, Skyhooks. There was the St Kilda scene was pretty healthy around that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were all national acts.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Small-minded, not globally
not
minded.
Not necessarily, but they were all did really well in Australia.
Yeah, they did. They did.
And we wanted to do really well everywhere in the world.
Yeah. But how did you get that insight to want to have a clear insight to say, well, that's what we want at that stage? Because a lot of people would say you'd have to crawl before you walk, sort of thing, but you already had your sights on, okay, I want to conquer America, which you did. But
well, not just America. I mean, America's a big deal, but
yeah.
No, we used to just sit around and talk and think. Well, we used to look at people. I also knew a couple of people in bands, and they would tell me of their struggles, even although they were signed, to Mushroom or whatever label they were signed to. Everyone was still struggling.
Yeah.
And even although they had a record deal, and so we just looked at the at labels, and we thought, well, CBS Records was, Columbia. They had Bob Dylan.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were, and so it was synchronistic. It wasn't really, it was down to a guy who worked for CBS Records in the sales department who was obsessed with the band. He used to come and see us every Wednesday night at the Pier Hotel in Frankston, and he used to redirect, put Men at Work signs in the CBS Records car park to get the attention of the executives, and or he'd nail people's phones to the desk, and he'd have Men at Work signs there just to get them to pay attention. So he was really instrumental in getting Peter Carpin to come down and have a look at the band playing. And so then it was just a series of events where Peter Carpin knew Peter McKeon, who was the record producer from America, who was visiting, doing a Sharon
O'Neill
album, exactly. And he came to see the band at the Mansell Room, and he just said, "Oh, I want to produce this band. I know what to do with them,"
Yeah.
And he did.
That's great. That's fantastic because it must have been very exciting. Just drawing on those type of.
Who are you talking about?
About the record company, like especially that salesperson who he was in your corner,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, he was a fan. He was like a just a guy that used to come and see the band. You know,
I mean,
didn't have really much.
you're off the ropes. You're like a boxer, you know. You're off the ropes, and you're sort of going into the fight now, you know. And you got someone backing you, you know.
Yeah, well, they gave us a single. They gave us a deal for a single.
Yeah.
Which was not showing an immense amount of confidence in the band. CBS, so we can do a single.
Yeah.
So we did Who Can It Be Now, and it went to number 2.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay, now you can do a full record. So
wow.
So that's what we did. And there was a key convention, a record, CBS Records convention. I think it was either Puerto Rico or it was Miami. I can't quite remember whether it was in the States or somewhere a bit more exotic. And Carpin went, Peter Carpin, he took a single of Who Can It Be Now? He didn't even have the name of the band. And he just spread that, had a meeting and played it for everybody, and we had the video and stuff. And then people, took it back to their respective territories. And it had a big impact, especially in a couple of the European. There's a guy called Norman Block. I think he was with CBS Switzerland. He went nuts for it, and he just said this is going to be a big hit. And so we had a few people on side in different parts of the world. So there were all these little spot fires that started to burn and smolder, and eventually it just all caught fire. And it was it was unstoppable. It was like a runaway train. You couldn't stop it then.
Yeah, totally.
It took all these kind of a series of things to, it was like the boxing analogy is funny, because it's like very rarely do you just have the king hit. You got to go the 15 rounds, and it's all combinations. It's all combinations. So it's all combination of factors that created the success we had.
The prize fighter. But so that's great. Do you think coming from a Scottish family has influenced you musically? Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think Scotland's like a musical country. It's a lot of music coming out of Scotland. There's music there. There's music in the air. Soul music was really big. My mother and father had a music shop in Scotland when I was growing up. So from the 58 till 67 till I came to Melbourne, we had a music shop. So, I listened to everything. I heard everything, so it was an incredible. I mean, that per se doesn't really have anything really necessarily to do with Scotland, but that was just the fact that we had a shop and you had music from everywhere coming at you, and I would hear it, and Monday all the singles would come in, and whether it was I Feel Fine or Waterloo Sunset or whatever it was just boom, there every time they would come in, you'd put them on and get blown away by it, but Scotland itself, I think that Scotland's a musical place, and everybody sings or thinks they can sing and loves to have a sing, and indeed, that used to be your entrance to a party, was whether you could sing or not, and you had to have a party piece, and just hope when you got there that nobody sang your song before you did. So they weren't singing classical Scottish folk songs or anything like that. I think it was all across the board. There would have been, Scottish songs. There would have been, hits of the day being sung. Whatever they were. Big band songs. What was happening in the American hit parade. All kinds of music. Yeah, because I've worked with a number of expat Scottish people, mainly from Edinburgh. Very talented people. But I went to Edinburgh a couple of years ago to do the jazz festival there, and I couldn't believe in summer I had to buy a scarf. Yeah, it's bloody cold. You're lucky that's all you had to buy. You had to buy scarves. We're getting away with it there. I've got to tell you, it was the coldest wind I've ever experienced in my life. It was brutal. Yeah. It was brutal. Yeah, that and sideways rain. Yeah, that's the thing. Umbrellas don't fucking work there at all. Throw them away. But you could drink to oblivion, and you can walk out and it sobers you up. That's the weird thing, isn't it? Yeah, well,
I actually, well, I was still drinking when I went back to Scotland. I didn't go back to Scotland for 16 years. I went back to Scotland when I was a Men at Work, and we played at the Apollo Theatre in Glasgow. And I was still drinking then. That was 80, I don't know, it was 82, I think it was, something like that. And that was brilliant, going back there, because I'd not been back. And of course they claimed me, as being from there. So that was a nice feeling. And I did enjoy myself, I have to say. That trip, it was brilliant. Had a great time. And since I've been back in the last 20 odd years or something, I haven't been drinking, so
Yeah.
that's also been good as well, but for many different reasons,
Yeah. But that must have been pretty exciting, going back to Scotland in '82, and you sort of on this crest of a wave with your popularity and the access that you have to the world market. What was it like? Was it just did you believe where you were? Because 12 months prior, you were probably just at the Cricketers' Arms trying to get a gig, or down the pier. And in 12 months, that transition totally would have spun you out a bit, yeah?
Well, it's something, it sounds a little odd to say, really, but it's something that I'd been dreaming about for many, many years, since I was 14 years old or something. I wanted to be in a band and I'd be in a successful, touring band and, make records and all that kind of stuff. That was what I wanted to do for as long as I could remember. Mm-hmm. So you kind of build up and you build up to things, and things move slowly. I'm in 72, say 10 years previous to that, I'd gone to Sydney to 73, I think it was, to try and become successful, and came home with my tail between my legs. I thought, oh, this is hard. This is not that easy, to do.
Yeah.
I'd go up there. I went up to Sydney and saw, people playing like Renee Gare and Mother Earth and Doug Parkinson and all kinds of local people. Chain would come up and play, and I was trying to get into bands, and I would, I'd get into bands, but then they were just stupid bands. They weren't really going to do anything. And so I just came home with my tail between my legs, and then I got a letter saying I could go back to school, if I wanted to. So I thought, I'll go to university and bide my time and kind of plot and scheme and try and figure out how to do this properly. So that's kind of what I did. I went to university and kind of did an arts degree, which is basically useless,
Yeah.
But it allowed me to write songs and to play shows and to just meet people and just be young and carefree, if you like,
Yeah.
And I met Jerry, the drummer, there through Kim Gingell. Actually, I met Men at Work really wouldn't have existed if it hadn't been for Kim Gingell, actually, because Kim introduced me to Greg Ham and at school when we were at school together, because he knew Greg. So I'd known Greg since 72, and then Kim also went to school with Jerry. So he introduced me to Jerry. So he was very instrumental in introducing me to people that became important people in my life. What happens is you usually it goes slowly, and you think, oh, everything's going slowly. For years and years, like 10 years, 12, 13 years, 14 years, 15 years, you're trying to get something going, So it's a long time. And then there's a quickening that happens. All of a sudden you think, oh, hang on, something's happening here. And you can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel it because you're in the band and you're playing these songs and people are responding to them. The live audiences are responding to them in a really, really undeniable way. and that was really important to us. You know, we were never, you know, the darlings of the Melbourne rock press and all that kind of stuff was really, I'm not going to say it was of no interest to us, but, you know, it wasn't that important to us to be, you know, the coolest band on the block, you know, because we're certainly around that.
No, you weren't, because
we had this audience that understood what we were saying or what we were trying to say, you know. And so it just grew from that, you know. It just grew, and so every audience was bigger. Every audience kind of got more and more people. So I guess by the time we left, we were playing to, you know, maybe 1,000 people, which is a lot of people, really. Yeah, totally. Before we had a record deal, you know, we were playing to 1,000 people. So, but then it got really, really, really quick, and so you think you're handling it well. Like, I thought I was handling things fine. I thought I was doing, you know, I thought I knew everything, you know, and of course, turns out that I knew nothing. And it turns out that I wasn't really doing it that well. I just thought I was.
Yeah. That's the trick, isn't it? It tricks you. I think it's the ego that tricks you, you know.
It is indeed. Yeah. The ego is responsible for a lot of things. The ego is responsible for, you know, not necessarily all bad things, but often they become bad things, you know, because your ego can take you far, you know, because it gives you a lot of impetus, it gives you a lot of energy, it gives you a lot of drive, and, you know, a lot of momentum, and it works, you know. But then you get that, and then it's okay. Then it's kind of like, well, what do you do with that? You know, then a more, you know, something more holistic has to come into play at some point.
Yes.
Otherwise, your ego will turn on you.
That's right. And it's not a dirty word, right? Ego is not a dirty word. Skyhooks. Hey?
You know that Bobby Franklin joke?
No.
You know who Bob Franklin is?
No.
Bob Franklin, he's one of the greatest. I'm not going to do his joke because it's not fair. Because it's a fucking it's one of my favorite jokes ever.
Okay, I'll look him up.
Look him up, and
I apologize that I'm not aware of him.
You can probably Google ego is not a dirty word. Bob Franklin.
Okay.
I'll give you his gag. It's a simple gag, but it's a beauty.
Okay. This is something dear to my heart. The song Be Good Johnny was my theme in the early 80s, as I had a learning disability and struggled at school. Was this written about a particular Johnny, or was this about kids who didn't fit the mould?
What was your learning disability?
Well, I was diagnosed as an adult. I wasn't diagnosed as a child, but I had to go to a psychologist, and they tested me for the amount of words I could take in before I lost concentration and basically it's dyslexia.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Basically, basically it's dyslexia, you know. But I had a really hard time at school because I couldn't, you know, they didn't know what to do with me, you know, especially when you're in the public system. And when I heard that song,
that must have been rough.
Oh, it was, and I was in the western suburbs of Melbourne, you know, so I wasn't getting. I was sort of next to the refineries and all that sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah, not a lot of sensitivity, perhaps.
No, not at all. I remember I was doing a radio show because I was so dysfunctional, and the English teacher said, "Look, why don't you do a radio show?" So I did one from the school canteen, and I remember I got the single Johnny, Be Good Johnny, and I remember watching the film clip. And you had the white socks and the shorts, and I had a teacher who actually used to wear those white socks and shorts.
Yeah, me too, yeah. Good look, isn't it? It's a fucking shocking look.
I know, right?
You know, I mean, when I first came from Scotland, I used to see these fucking teachers walking around with Bermuda shorts, or those shorts and those long walk socks. And I used to think, look at those fucking dopes fucking walking around in that. They look like just really like adult fucking, you know.
They're in the Swiss Alps or something, you know.
You know, they looked like kids, like they were wearing what kids would wear, except they were big people, you know, weird.
I know. I had plenty. I had two of those in particular, one in grade 6 and one in year 8, and they were the biggest arseholes you could imagine.
Yeah.
As teachers, you know.
Yeah.
But was the song? Did you have an insight to that at that stage, Colin? Like, is that why you wrote it, or
no? I
reached the mark.
I just had to think of everyone telling you what to do.
Yeah.
You know, usually whether it's teachers or adults telling you to be good, telling you to do this or to do that, and if you didn't, you'd be in trouble. You know, and so I think that a lot of people can relate to that, because I think that a lot of people feel that way. You know, more than you'd imagine. So it was at a rehearsal one day, and Greg was just messing around with this little kind of keyboard thing, and I just started singing "Be Good, Be Good," and I just started singing this thing, and I said, let's write a song, you know, from the standpoint of a 9-year-old boy, you know. And Greg was really great, because he was a bit of a kid anyway. He used to do children's theater, you know. He had a real childlike quality to him, you know, bright eyes, you know. So we just wrote that together that day.
Wow. Because your brother's a secondary school teacher, yeah?
Oh, he was, yeah. He's retired now.
He's retired, yeah. So did that give you?
He taught here, and he taught in New Zealand. He was the dean of a school over there, you know.
Okay. So did he give you any impetus, like, of, you know, these are the wider scale of society, and this is what's going on?
No, I never talked to him about that. No.
Okay.
He's a lovely man, though.
Yeah, that demystifies my imagination a bit. But how have you adjusted from playing in Men at Work to your solo career, and what sort of adjustments have you made since the height of Men at Work? I know that's a sort of broad question.
Well, it's so long ago, really.
Yeah.
I mean, Men at Work was really over at the end of '83.
Wow.
It stumbled along for another year or two, but it was done, really, because the original band was really Men at Work, you know. That was really what created the sound of the band, and that's what Men at Work was, really, truth be known. We did one record after that, just Greg and Ron and I. And then, but halfway through that, Ron went home. He left because, you know, I don't know, you'd have to talk to him, I suppose, but I don't think he ever really particularly liked Men at Work that much. You know, he wasn't really keen on the way the, you know, producing what happens when you when you produce things. You know, he was much more into what we did, he and I did, you know, before Men at Work, which was a lot more kind of, I don't know, acoustic meanderings, if you like, you know. But they were interesting. Used to use some different tunings and stuff, and we were messing around with writing songs back then, you know. So it was an interesting kind of music that wasn't really heard that much, you know, and it's very, very kind of British influenced as well, you know, people like John Martin and Bert Jansch and people like that, you know. So anyway, yeah, so it was over pretty, Men at Work was pretty done by the end of the big tour we did. We the end of 1983. But you had... so it's a long time ago. So we kind of limped along for a couple of years, and then it was done. I mean, I never really left the band. You know, Ron left, and then Greg said, "I've had enough," and the third record didn't work. And so everybody just kind of left the band, left me. And well, actually, the rhythm section was sacked. Actually, that's the truth. That's what happened there, which was quite a callous thing to do in retrospect. And but these are the things you can be a lot wiser about in hindsight, you know.
Yeah.
But so I made a solo record called Looking for Jack, still on Columbia, and I did it. It was a great experience. I rehearsed in Los Angeles. And then I went to do the record in London with a great record producer called Robin Miller, who did all the Shady records and Everything But the Girl and Fine Young Cannibals and bands like that. So that was really good, but it didn't really do anything. It was a commercial failure. And then I got an offer from MCA Records to go from Columbia to MCA, which was a mistake to do that. But all the advice I had at the time was to switch labels. So I switched labels to MCA Records, which was based here in LA. And so I came to Los Angeles really only just for a few months to sign that deal and to, kind of make contact with the record company over here. And so I made a record for them called Wayfaring Sons, and that was a commercial failure as well. So I got dropped. So in 91, I was here in Los Angeles, and I didn't really have anything. I didn't have a manager or a label or an agency or anything. I just thought I was on my own, and I wasn't, I wasn't struggling. I'd had success with Men at Work, so I was okay, but I really didn't know what to do. So I just started going out on the road by myself and in America. And I was playing to nobody, 20 people, 30 people, 35 people, 40 people. But not just for like a wee while, this is for fucking years. I did this. I'd go back out on the road, and then I'd come home again, and then I'd go back out on the road. And then every time I went out, more people were there. There'd be 100 people there this time, and then maybe 150 people there. Oh, there's 300 people there. Oh, is that right? And so that's what I did. So that was the transition from Men at Work to that, was just going from Men at Work to nothing. It was like going from the biggest gig you could play, US Festival in 1983, 150,000 people. Thank you very much. Good night. That's it for us. And it was, we were done. And in a way, that's kind of good. Because go, okay, fucking that's it. Top that, you fuckers, and then just leave, And so I went back to playing to nobody. And so that's what and then I did that for, I still do it, but I did it for like 13 years before I got involved with a label in Nashville who distribute my stuff. And now there's a bit more of an infrastructure and still a very, very cottage industry, really. But now I can play to like 1,000 people, or, that's just through word of mouth. And I can do that all over the country, all over the world, actually. So it's taken about 25 years to do that. So the transition you're talking about is just, you don't kind of really leave something in, you just leave somewhere, then you arrive somewhere else. So you're never really actually, I've made the transition now.
Yeah.
You're just constantly transitioning to something else, or else you're becoming something else. You never actually really arrive, You just keep moving forward. That's what I thought, when I was playing to nobody. I didn't think, and I remember my old Brian Hunt, my guitar tech, I'd be walking on stage to play to 30 people, and he was there when we played the 150,000 people, and he just looked at me and he goes, just do them all, mate. Just do them all. There's a great truth in that, great wisdom in that.
Absolutely.
If there's an audience there, play to the audience that's there.
That's right.
Don't play to the audience that's not there.
That's right. How would you describe your music now, and who are your current influences?
Dua Lipa? No, Dua Lipa?
Dua Lipa, no.
Yeah, she's an English artist.
Okay.
Awesome. She's just won a bunch of Grammys. Megan Thee Stallion. Yeah, she's big too. All the girls are doing great at the moment, I reckon.
They are.
Billie Eilish.
Yeah.
They're all doing really well. I find them very inspiring. What was your first question?
So your current music is like
I don't know how to describe it. I wouldn't have a clue.
Well, I had a listen to.
I think it's pop music, but I always think it's pop music because, the Beatles they were pop stars. They wrote pop songs. So to me, it's the same thing. But as to every other people, that's probably not true at all.
Well, when I
But,
heard your current album, the acoustic one that you've just released in 2020,
what's that? I haven't released an album in 2020.
well, it was on Spotify, and it said
What's it called?
it's got a yellow cover, and it was an acoustic album.
Going somewhere.
I think that could be it. Is that the current one?
No, I did that in 2000, 20 years ago. They might have re-released it, but
That's
no,
weird.
I haven't released a new acoustic album this year.
I haven't you?
No.
So your last record was what?
It's called Fierce Mercy in 2017.
17, yeah. That was more with the band. That wasn't an acoustic album, right?
No, it wasn't an acoustic album.
Yeah.
I haven't released an acoustic album. Fierce Mercy is the last album I've released.
Okay. That's a good album. That's a very good album. I listen to that quite regularly when I'm having a shower, and something I've picked up about.
It's good shower music.
Yeah. And something I picked up listening to the album, which was the strength of your writing now. It's more retrospective and it's more matured. I guess that's what happens when you keep doing things. Like Men at Work was a type of writing, but now you're more reflective and have a really strong sense of rhythm with your lyrics. That's something that I've picked up. Would you say that would be correct?
Well, you try and get better, don't you? At what you're doing. So I think I'm better now.
Yeah.
Consistently.
Yeah.
And there's more time to think about things in a way, I suppose. I think a lot of it's to do with the touring again, where you have a lot of just things that are going through your head as you're on the road, because you're in your own head all the time. So, and I would just make the records at home. And so, you're just trying to enjoy yourself, and come up with things that are different and that you haven't done before. When I think about Men at Work, a lot of the songs were pretty dense. I think a lot of people always kind of slightly miscast our band in the sense that they look at the novelty aspect, or they get annoyed because of the cultural cringe factor of Down Under, or whatever they think about that. It's ultimately I think it's a song about celebration, but it had that in it where people would think, oh no, that's not who we are, but it is who a lot of people are. There are a lot of ugly Australians out there. There are a lot of people that are unconscious. Yeah. That's really what the verses was about, and it's a dangerous thing if those people are running the show, because that's why you need to run and take cover, because it's such a yourself, it's such a unique place. And when I arrived there, I was constantly blown away by the fact that I didn't understand anything about Australia. The way it felt under your feet, it was just so different from Scotland.
It's true. That's true. Yeah.
And so that I used to wander around with this thing in my head all the time about, one day I didn't know how to write a song about that thing that I felt, and somewhere in that song Down Under, that exists because it was a hit all around the world, and people don't know the subtlety of, or they don't know the lyrical circumstance of what that is, what the verses are and stuff. They don't really understand the lyrics if English is not the first language. But they understood the feeling of it. There was something about inside the song that they felt. And it's something it's like an ethnic thing. It's something that roots you down to the earth. And Indigenous people get it in Australia too. They have a very different reaction to that song than European people, or the colonists.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. But
So
they
I'm constantly kind of, you know, thinking about things like that, just because of the fact that you can, and it's, you know, it's you know, you want to try and just you want to stay interested, you know, you want to stay interested in what's going on around you, you know. And so consequently, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I just think I try and make better records all the time, you know, and let other people decide what they get from it, you know. But there's certain songs, like there was a song in the Fierce Mercy that I really love. Uh,
The one I like is the one where you say the pickup truck, kick up dust. It's got that wording in it.
yeah, Tumbling Down.
Tumbling Down. That's a great tune.
Mm.
So, what made you become an American citizen, and how often do you visit Australia?
Why? Well, the first reason was my guy that does my books, my accountant, my business advisor, whatever you call it, said to me that if I die, then my wife would be financially compromised if I wasn't a citizen. So I didn't want to, you know, didn't want that to happen to her if I fell off my perch.
Mm-hmm.
So that made sense to me, and then I started to kind of think about it, and you know, Barack Obama was still president, so that was good, and you know, we loved him, and it was great when he got voted into power. So that was a reason too, because I thought, well, okay, he's nearly done. I don't know what's going to happen. So I just kind of felt that was the right time. And you know, in some ways, I always thought that I've always had my feet, you know, in both places. I've always got a place in Melbourne, and I come back there a lot. But I've been living here for 30 years. But I originally came for I thought, well, I'll stay here for maybe a year or two, then I'll go back to Melbourne. And then it just kept going. So I thought, well, part of me always says to me, part of me thinks, oh, well, you know, I'll probably go back to Australia. And then I think to myself, well, hang on, I'm 67 years old. I've been here for 30 years. I'm probably going to stay here. That's probably what I'm going to do, you know. So I thought, well, you know, I'll become an American.
So for someone who hasn't been to Los Angeles, can you paint a picture of what it's like?
It's very big. It's just really big and sprawling. It has its own beauty. You know, it's not, you know, it's not like a classically beautiful city, I don't think, but, you know, there's some awesome mountain ranges, and you get the ocean, and, you know, different parts of it are pretty great. And, but everything is here. Everything is in Los Angeles. Whatever you want, you can find it in LA, you know. But it's not for everybody. I didn't think I would live here. When I first came, I just thought it was a very strange place. And when I came back to live here, I just had I was looking at it with different eyes. And I also wanted to kind of start again somewhere. You know, things were pointing away from Melbourne for me at that time. So I just kind of, it felt really good to be here when I first came. It felt, to coin a cliche, really, it sounds like, but just felt very healing to me, because I'd been putting myself, you know, through the ringer for years, you know, just with a drink and whatnot, you know. So I thought, well, I need to just come here and wipe the slate clean, start again. So, so it's really kind of, I think it's quite a spiritual place, Los Angeles. In a lot of ways, it's very. I get hit by moments of real when I'm driving down the freeway. Sometimes I just get hit by these fleeting moments of euphoria. You know, at my good fortune. You know, and I look up at the hills and the air's clean and it's a red sky and it's desert. You know, it's beautiful, and I just think, oh, this is fucking magic.
But anyway, I want to thank you for your time. It's been fantastic talking with you.
All right, boys. See you later on. Take care.
You too.
When voodoo strikes, it'll tear apart your head. When voodoo strikes, you wish that you was dead. When voodoo strikes, it'll tear apart your head. When voodoo